Let's imagine you've just come out of the cinema and what you've seen has made you laugh, it's made you cry. Frankly, it's changed your life. And we bump into each other and I say, "How was the film?" And you tell me, "It was good." And I understand, must have been pretty good. And you say, "No, it was very good." And I say, "Better than The Hangover 2. And you say, "No, it was very, very, very good." And then I say, "You need to learn some superlatives." So today we're going to talk about things that are incredibly good, things that are the best in their category. And I'm going to start by discussing a work of art and a violin. And everything that I'm about to say, I've put in the description box below so you can check out the vocabulary. Then I'm going to give you 10 examples of superlatives, ways of expressing that things are just incredibly good that you can add to your day-to-day conversations. This is YouTube, so I'm going to ask you to hit the subscribe button. That would really help me out. And now let's just get into it. Is the Mona Lisa the best painting in the world? It's certainly considered the best painting in the Louvre gallery in Paris. If you get to the gallery early in the morning and then you run from the entrance to the room where the Mona Lisa is hanging, you can usually get fairly close to the painting and take a look at it. But wait another 20 minutes or so and the room is absolutely packed. It's the work of art that absolutely everybody wants to see. And whilst you can walk around the other rooms of the museum fairly easily, that's really not the case with the room where the Mona Lisa hangs. People vote with their feet, and what they're saying is that that is the best painting in the museum. Now, the writer Duncan Watts has given this some thought, and he decided to ask people why the Mona Lisa is the best picture in the museum and possibly the world. And he always heard people saying that it's because of her eyes and the way they follow you around the room. It's because of her expression that is so unknowable. And Duncan Watts realised that people weren't describing qualities of the painting, they were just describing the painting. The Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world, he concluded, because it's the painting that most closely resembles the Mona Lisa. But the Mona Lisa was not always a famous painting. Leonardo da Vinci finished it in 1507, and it wasn't until 1860 that it became recognised by French art critics as a masterpiece of Renaissance art. But even then it wasn't a famous picture. It wasn't until 1911, when it was stolen from the gallery, that the rest of the world got to hear about it. And even when it was stolen, it took the gallery 2 days to notice that it was missing. It's actually quite difficult to assess whether something is really the best or not. Let's take the example of the Stradivarius violin. It's widely considered amongst experts that those examples of the instrument built by the Stradivari family between 1700 and 1725 are the best violins ever made in the world. There are 650 of them left today, and a cheap one will cost you $1.5 million, but you could pay 10 times that for one easily. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if it was simply the case that art collectors put them in glass cases to preserve them. But no, working musicians from orchestras are still using them as their primary concert instrument. Imagine that, getting on a plane with $2 million worth of vintage antique instrument that's incredibly fragile in your carry-on luggage. Now, it should come as something of a surprise to us that in the 300 years since the Stradivari family were making these instruments, that no one's come up with anything better. Well, actually, the truth is they have. In a series of tests in which both the audience members and the musicians themselves were blindfolded, modern violins invariably outperformed the Stradivarius in terms of the sound quality and its ability to project in a concert hall. Now that it's been categorically proven, at least in terms of its sound, that the Stradivarius is no longer the best violin in the world, you might think that prices of the instruments would have fallen. Well, that hasn't happened. You might think demand for them would have fallen. That hasn't happened either. No, in fact, the Stradivarius remains the most sought-after violin in the world. Why? Because the violin that most closely resembles a Stradivarius is, of course, the Stradivarius. So going back to basics, if we want to say that something's good, there are broadly three ways we can do it. We can use an adjective, a comparative, or the superlative. So we could say that the film was good. We could say that the film was better than The Hangover 2 using the comparative. Or we could say it was the best film that has ever been made, and we're using the superlative there. Now the word superlative is itself quite interesting because it's both a noun, meaning a class of adjective or adverb that expresses the highest possible value of a given attribute, whereas it's also, as of itself, an adjective, meaning of the highest quality possible. It's easier to understand this distinction between its two uses by taking a look at a couple of sentences. So, critics have run out of superlatives to describe the exquisite tone of the Stradivarius. So here the word superlative is being used as a noun, and what we're saying is that critics have exhausted all of those superlatives in the dictionary because the tone of the violin is so good. Critics have run out of superlatives to describe the exquisite tone of the Stradivarius. But in the second sentence, we use the word superlative as an adjective. Many musicians still believe the Stradivarius to be the world's superlative violin. Now, of course, we could simply substitute the word superlative for best, but simply using the word superlative adds a little bit more colour to the sentence, and it emphasises just how good the instrument is. Many musicians still believe the Stradivarius to be the world's superlative violin. So now we're going to take a look at some more interesting ways to say that something is really, really, really good. I'm going to start with this noun, benchmark, meaning a high level of quality by which all others should be judged. And we could use it in a sentence like this. The Stradivarius sets the benchmark for all violins. And note that collocation, sets the benchmark. Could equally say that Steven Spielberg set the benchmark for mainstream movie making in the 1980s. So there's one way of saying that something's really good, that it sets the benchmark. Another is that something is the gold standard, the highest obtainable level of quality. So we could say, for example, that Oxford and Cambridge represent the gold standard of British universities. The phrase itself dates from the time when major economic currencies were tied to the value of gold. Now that's no longer the case, but the phrase itself, the gold standard, has remained in our language. Or you could say that something is really good by describing it as preeminent, which is an adjective, obviously. The most important, most successful, or the most powerful. So we could say, for example, that Tom Cruise has proved to be the preeminent action star of his generation. That Great Britain was the preeminent global power in the 19th century. Now, preeminent is quite a formal adjective that you'd use in fairly formal circumstances, whereas the last word can be used in a slightly more light-hearted manner. Means the best, obviously, and often used when expressing a personal opinion. So I might say, for me, Rioja is the last word in wine, meaning that I think Rioja is absolutely fantastic and unbeatable. Or we can say that something is the Rolls Royce, a high level of quality by which to judge others. So we could say Helen swears that the white chocolate Magnum is the Rolls Royce of ice creams. We could just say that she says it's the best ice cream, but that's not as rich, it's not as entertaining. So this phrase, the Rolls Royce of ice creams, really gives us a sense that Helen really likes the white chocolate Magnum. We can also say that something is quintessential, an adjective, meaning the perfect example of something. Visually striking and thrilling to drive, the Ferrari is the quintessential sports car. Quintessential can also be used as a synonym of typical. So we could also say that Springfield, where the Simpsons live, is the quintessential American small town. And there we're not praising Springfield, we're just saying that it's typical of other small towns. But when we use the word quintessential in the context of praise, in the context of this sentence about the Ferrari, for example, it really lifts what we're saying. So we could simply have said that the Ferrari is the best sports car. But after saying that it's visually striking and thrilling to drive, the Ferrari is the quintessential sports car. It's just a more exciting choice of word. We can also say that something is sublime, another adjective, possessed of a quality that is emotionally moving. So we could say, for example, the wine's bouquet can only be described as sublime. It is the promise of heaven in a glass. So here I'm going quite over the top in my language, and I'm trying to say that this wine is offering me an almost spiritual experience. And for that reason I've chosen the word sublime. It really has got to my soul, this one. We can also say that something is peerless, meaning without equal, or literally without peers. So we could say, there is nothing quite like an English summer day spent under peerless clear skies. Or, his ability to read the game is peerless, if we were talking about a footballer, for example. His ability to read the game is peerless. He reads the game better than anyone else. If we want to say that a person is incredibly good at what they do, we might say that they are consummate, an adjective, meaning highly skilled. Ever the consummate campaigning politician, she never lost an election. Or we might say of an actor, a consummate professional, he never forgot his lines. There's other ways we can talk about personal skill as well. We can use the word virtuoso, and we can both use it as a noun and as an adjective, meaning a person of unrivaled skill when it's a noun, and being extremely skilled when it's an adjective. The word virtuoso is most closely associated with the world of music, so we'd often talk about someone being a virtuoso violinist, for example. However, we can use the word in other contexts as well. So I could say, ever the virtuoso, Messi mesmerised the crowd with yet another virtuoso performance. The first time we hear the word in the sentence, it's a noun, and the second time, it's an adjective. Ever the virtuoso, Messi mesmerised the crowd with yet another virtuoso performance. What I'm saying here is that his performance was so good that it was almost artistic. Well, it's time to wrap this one up. If you've got any questions, or you simply want to let me know that this has been the last word in English language videos on YouTube, then let me know in the comments below. And given that you've made it this far through the video, if you haven't already, it's surely time to hit that subscribe button. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.